still waiting for the contracts to be accepted by both parties. The finish line for implementation, we have no idea. We're still running the race, and we'll get there eventually. We're just not there yet. This one is important, letter D. So again, the BEI as proposed, we know that those who do not have a license yet from Wisconsin, we haven't, rather, let the interpreter clarify, we haven't leased it yet. If the DSPS recognizes the BEI as a replacement for the WIDA, interpreters may have to travel to take the test initially. It's going to depend on the timeline again, whether or not Wisconsin is administering yet. This is a little bit of a challenge right now, and we do recognize that. We are willing to work with our peers to address this concern. It's not perfect. We acknowledge that. We're keeping our communication open for those that will be affected by this, who will have to travel. Moving on. The question is the BEI basic skill level expectation equivalent to the skill level expected for the WIDA 2.2? And as a disclaimer, I'm not a sign language interpreter. I work with sign language interpreters, of course. This is more Amber's purview. The WIDA 2.2 would be equivalent to the BEI basic, that's my understanding. The WIDA, though, is more subjective. We admit that. The BEI is more objective. It's strictly looking at someone's skill set with signing and voicing and their English proficiency. So the answer is yes, but the tests themselves are different. Okay? Next question, letter F. For this one, as I mentioned before, there are several states that already have the BEI. So interpreters can move, relocate to different states. Interpreters from Illinois could come to Wisconsin, so we hope to encourage that. We want high-quality interpreters, and we want Wisconsin to be known for high-quality interpreters. So yes, if the BEI is recognized and you move from Texas, Michigan, Illinois, hopefully Wisconsin will be added to the list. Interpreters can move, and vice versa. I see a question.
And this is Tom Benzinger. That would be amazing if we could do this interstate and reciprocity between states to recognize the BEI. But the licensure laws are different. So I think that is something we need to look into, is the licensure laws of other states.
That is a very good question, and I don't have the full answer at this point, but that is certainly something that we are keeping our eye on. We follow DSPS in terms of licensure and certification, so we hope to align ourselves as closely as possible with the BEI basic as a minimum requirement, but that's a really good question. So we'll keep the lines of communication open as things develop.
Well, and I'm just wondering, so an interpreter who's working but legally working, they would have to match the state that they're working in. And it's normally following the legal address of where the individual resides, correct?
That would be something I would encourage you to contact DSPS on, because that is their scope. That does not belong with ODHH. And looks like Pam is making a note of it, so that's great. Okay, moving on. To letter I, or
This is the
number
interpreter.
one.
Can we ask for clarification on that last question, please? One moment. I just want to repeat and get some clarification for the interpreting team. Thank you for your patience.
So the question on the floor is that different states have individual licensure laws or requirements, and that's even for other professions. So in order to obtain that license, you have to have a legal address in that state. So that is my question. Do they have to have that legal address, and would that then cross over with other interpreters coming from other states? Same with how you register for voting, you have to have a legal address in the state to be a registered voter.
Okay. Oh, Pam, no, I'm missing the top of the question. There we go. So the question we got, can you see me, Terry? If we get our BEI basic and our provisional license runs out in 2017, what happens if Wisconsin hasn't adopted or recognized the BEI in place of the widow? Will I lose my ability to interpret? Am I out of luck? Just to clarify again, we are talking with DSPS. The BEI has several levels, as we know. Basic is the bottom, but that is something that would be equivalent to the widow. If you take the BEI and pass it, the expectation is that you have the widow. It's just like the NIC while they're in their moratorium and fixing the test. That certification is equivalent to BEI Master and Advanced. DSPS would need to have more conversations to see if they would recognize that as well. Currently, they seem to be in full support, but to answer this question specifically, the WIDA is comparable to the BEI Basic. So for interpreters who have their RID certification, they would be considered to have their BEI Master or Advanced.
But the point of that question is, it's until DSPS says, yes, we accept the BEI. Until that day happens, if there is a lapse, you probably can't interpret. Am I clear in that?
I missed what you said, I'm sorry. Can you repeat it? I wasn't watching the interpreter.
It's okay. So, I understand that, like you said, ODHH and DSPS is in negotiation with Texas and the BEI. But until DSPS says, yes, it is equivalent, it will replace the WIT, until that is solidified, if there is a lapse, an interpreter may have their BEI, but DSPS hasn't recognized it yet, they can't work.
That is something that needs to be addressed. Got it, I see the question, okay. We will be communicating, with whatever fallout that might include. If interpreters are at risk of losing their job, then DSPS will be talking with them and figuring out next steps. That is our goal, of course, to communicate with those people who would be affected by that. Okay?
John Todd.
Oh. Who has a question? I don't see the question. Who is the question?
Hi, John Todd. I just have two questions regarding that really quick. Number one, what is, if you already answered this, sorry, what's the timeline looking at for DSPS to go ahead and approve the BEI basic as the same as the WIDA and the advanced as the same as the NIC? And number two, I know you said there's discussion going on about that. Is there somebody that we as interpreters can be contacting to try and maybe get them to hurry that process along?
Good question. To answer your first question, the timeline for the BEI being recognized by DSPS, we're hoping to land by next spring, 2017. That is the goal. We're remaining hopeful. Again, there's paperwork, contracts, training, evaluators that need to be brought on. So again, spring 2017. To answer your second question, can you encourage folks? For licensure purposes and for legal reasons, that would be directed towards DSPS, their Sign Language Interpreting Council, so I would direct you there. They have an examination office. Yeah. DSPS, internally, they have an examination office. Office of Examination is, I believe, is what it's called. OEE, Office of Education and Examination. DSPS is a big department and staff moves around, but for the purposes of your question here, you would want to contact SLIC, Sign Language Interpreter Council, and the Office for Education and Examination to encourage them.
Okay, so if I contact the OEE, the Office for Examining Education, Education Examination, that is not going to hurt our cause at all as long as I'm doing so in a professional manner?
Right now, we have a working relationship with DSPS to work this out and have this realized for the BEI to be implemented here. And they know that for the BEI Basic, the Advanced and the Masters to be adopted here. That is a common goal we have. We are working together. Yeah, and then that will benefit everybody. So we're in that process, that dialogue now. I think right now it's gray. I understand your frustration. You want things to be clearer than they are. I am hopeful though, as I say, once the paperwork's in order, then things will move more quickly. Okay? Yes.
And this is Kaylin Euro. All right, so I have two questions as well. So my cohort that graduated together from the interpreter training program, we've been through two cycles of renewal. Now, you have to pass both the, English proficiency and the basic to become licensed. That replaces the WITA, okay?
Could you hold for the interpretation, please?
So my cohort is struggling right now because we cannot get the regular license. We've already expired our options for the restricted license.
We would have to get the advanced in order to be able to work in the state, is my understanding. My specific cohort.
Okay, gotcha.
So yeah, that was my clarification, is that they had to do both the TEP, the English, basic, and advanced, because my group has already done 2 renewals. So I wanted to clarify that. My second question is that right now, RID does both the NIC test and monitors the CEUs. Since ODHH is gonna be the only office that's providing this BEI test, will they be also monitoring CEUs for the BEI test? Because DSPS doesn't monitor our CEUs, only the actual license itself. So who's monitoring the CEUs for the BEI?
That's a good question. I appreciate you asking that. I'm gonna follow up on that. Our office has been working with the content really of the exam for the BEI itself, just kind of the meat and potatoes. And the licensing portion would be under DSPS, but that I'm intrigued with. I'm gonna follow up on that. Who's gonna be doing the monitoring of the CEUs? That's an excellent question. I'm gonna put that down.
I mean, well, I don't know what ODHH is going to do, but I know Texas does have a system for monitoring CEUs, so I'm assuming BEI from Texas would require you to have that same sort of monitoring. Because I can't imagine that they would sell you the test without requiring the CEUs that go with them. But I'll write that down.
Hey, Daryl. Erin Paschel, Poeschel. Michigan and Illinois also, you have to submit your CEUs to the state, so I think it will change things. Great point. I need a little bit of clarification. I'm excited to see so many people working on this problem. But I thought in the beginning that this task force was looking at how to address the permanent license and the issues with NIC and the law related to those. And that ODHH was working separately, maybe in conjunction with the WITA being a problem. So is ODHH making sure that the BEI basic is equivalent to WIT and acceptable to the SPS? And the advanced and master BEI also acceptable to the SPS? So you're working on all the levels.
That is the plan, yes. The advanced and master level would be a renewable license level, same as national certification. That's the goal. The BEI basic would be equivalent to the WITA, state level testing. That's part of the whole package plan.
And then I would like to,
We're gonna do the BEI basic first, 2017, that's gonna roll out first. And then after that, we're gonna keep rolling out
Okay,
after that.
so that will be later, the next two levels. The advanced and master will be later, maybe later.
In the near future, I'm hoping, not way out there. I'm hoping sooner than later.
And then I want to answer your question about the task force. So we have invited ODHH here because we are exploring what are the alternatives to NIC. ODHH isn't doing this because of us, they're doing it because the law requires them to do it. It just states that they must, if the WIDA becomes obsolete, they have to find a successor to it. So this is ODHH is doing this. We want information, right? So we want to know, okay, this is what ODHH is doing. Is this something that we feel is a viable option? So this is our information seeking process as well. But as part of that certification committee, that subcommittee, we take the information that we get from ODHH, we'll see what's happening with RID and the NIC, and then we will also this summer explore, are there other options, right? So this is still part of that information gathering. But I would rather that ODHH present on the BEI, not Peyton.
Okay, Joel?
And this is Joel. It seems like you have a close working relationship with DSPS, but which division are you the most closely working with under that DSPS?
OEE, the Office for Education and Examination. That's currently who we're working with as of the structuring right now.
Erin, did I answer your?
Okay, we're on letter G. This will be discussed with the BEI staff during the implementation training as to what it will be look like for the actual monitoring process. The code of ethics, conflict of interest, ethical issues. There will be something in place at that point of the process.
I'm just gonna add. The license already covers unethical behavior. If you look at the administrative rules, again, 201 or 202, whatever it is, talks about all the unethical behaviors that an interpreter can be filed a grievance against. And so whether it be BEI, whether it be WIDA, whether it be RID, whatever its successor is, the law and the administrative rules already cover that unethical practices. So that's already taken care of. So nothing, it's already there. I mean, that's it. Okay.
Should I press on here, Dan?
Me.
Amy's got something to say.
I always have something to say. Just something, Dan, for you to take back when you're doing your research on CEUs, is also to take a look at the master level of the BEI and figuring out if it's really an appropriate equivalent to replace the SCL that has currently been put on hold by RID, because the way I understand it is the way the test is structured for the master level regarding legal work is that it only applies to Texas law, not general United States law, which is what the current SCL test is. So, something to keep in mind. Certification committee too.
And Amy, Texas has created a BEI court interpreting performance exam. I have the study guide.
From?
It's, in 2015, they created a court interpret, it's right here, study guide for BEI court interpretive performance. Goes through the whole process. Well, that's for Texas, but I'm saying, yes, can they adopt it? But it's not the master level, it's a separate test. And they have a separate test for medical interpreting as well.
That clarified it, thank you.
Mm-hmm. That's gonna be my.
Okay, relating to scarcity of interpreters. We're all aware of the challenge is to getting a good qualified interpreter. I think that question comes up and it really hit me. It really came up last time when I said that it's hard to find a good interpreter. A good qualified interpreter, especially in the northern region and in the southwestern region, in the rural areas. We do have a good number of interpreters in Wisconsin, we do, but we'd like to have more. And we'd like to have actual, like, statistics, how many qualified interpreters are in the north and in the west. The data shows there's not many. It's kind of concentrated in Madison area, Delavan, Milwaukee, kind of in like a triangle. There is some in Green Bay and Appleton area, but outside of that, not really. And it depends on where people live, where there's job opportunities for interpreters. But I wanted to let you all know that ODHH is aware of this. We do know that it's a legit concern. And as for the August 2017 timeline and how it's going to impact the interpreters who are going to lose their license, and it's going to impact deaf and hard of hearing community members getting qualified interpreters, there probably will be some license that lapse, but hopefully we can maintain the current status quo without, and our intent is to grow our pool rather than deplete it.
And I have a question for you too. Just a response to that comment, this is an evolving process with the data that we're given. And so initially when asked the question about the impact of the number of interpreters that would lose their license, we were initially told that it wasn't going to be significant. So I do apologize if people felt that they were being minimized about what's happening. That was never the intent. I was just working with data that I was given. Of course that data changes, right? And so that's with ODHH being here and updating those numbers, now we're getting more clarification. So again, in no way, shape, or form was that intended to dismiss what's happening here in our state. My question to you, Dan, and I think Amber was going to look this up for us, is that of those interpreters that will be losing their license, is it from the Milwaukee area? Is it from the Madison area? Is it from, where are we losing these interpreters? That would be helpful information. So if that's something that you can, do you have those numbers?
Yeah, I have those numbers.
Okay.
I can show those to you. Yes, thank you. This is very generous, letter B here, but ODHH will get state monies for training of raters. We're happy to work with Wisconsin Association of the Deaf and Wisconsin Registry of Interpreters for the Deaf and get the interpreter community and the deaf community involved as well in training of these raters for BEI. But there's going to be state allocated money available. So there's no grants or anything. It's hard, cold cash. Okay, I see you, Tom. And Cookie and Katie?
Right, and this is Tom. This is all great discussion. Now, we've noticed that UWM's been growing in numbers of interpreters graduating from their program. They also have an American Sign Language Studies program that has been exploding over the years. So specifically